Hi, Nicole. Welcome to the summit. I'm so glad you're here. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, sure thing, Sasha. Thanks so much for having me. My name is Nicole Holland, and I work with entrepreneurs to help them build businesses online. Many of my entrepreneur clients already have businesses, but they just don't really have that online presence. So I help them get seen, get heard, all without having to dye their hair, and make a big impact and get their message out in a big way.
That's so awesome. So, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what's been going on with you recently? I know that you just had a summit and that you have a podcast coming up soon. We would love to hear a little bit about that before we jump in.
Indeed, I do. Thank you for that opportunity. So yes, I do an annual summit. Just in 2015, I had my first summit. It's called the Business Building Rockstar Summit. And it's 30 days, all November long, where I interview a different expert each day in a different specific marketing strategy. So a lot of my clients become overwhelmed by all the messages out there, right? You've got people telling you got to do this and you got to do that. And a lot of times you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't know which way is up. So I created the summit to break that down and say, you don't have to do anything. That's kind of my stand is you can design a business exactly perfect for you, not by anybody else's standards. And so with the summit, I brought together 30 different experts to talk about their favorite marketing strategies to introduce the basics of how to get started with them. So everything from blogging to email marketing to running summits, podcasts, and we went into creating products and all kinds of other really neat stuff. And so it was sort of like a basic introduction to all these different strategies and tactics. And then and that's actually going to come up again in 2016 this year in November 1st to 30th. And if you want in on that, businessbuildingrockstarsummit.com. That's where you can get the access to the autograph page gallery from last year. And I believe when this summit airs, when this interview airs, there may not be an opt-in yet for the 2016 summit because it's still a little bit early. But if you get on my list through getting the autograph page and all the freebies from the 2015 summit, I'll be able to let you know about that. And at time of recording, we're 3 weeks away from the launch of the Business Building Rockstar Show. And that can be found at bbrshow.com. And that is a bit of a journey behind the scenes of the rock stars. So many of the rock stars who were in the summit and who will be in the upcoming summit are my guests on the show, as well as some really neat new people who we kind of dive into their journey so that we can talk about, being an entrepreneur, it is not a cakewalk. There's lots of hills and valleys and it's up and down. And, my audience likes to know that they're not alone because as a solopreneur, as somebody working from home, oftentimes you just feel really isolated. And so this podcast, the summit, and the whole Business Building Rockstar brand is really to give people a sense of community and let them know there's support and they're not alone.
That's really awesome. So today we'll be talking all about launching a summit because Nicole is such an awesome person and she knows all about this stuff. So I'd just like to jump right in and sort of dig into your knowledge here. So my first question for you is, how long should a summit be if someone wants to see success?
Yeah, great question. It's really so individual. It really depends on so many things. I would never ever recommend anybody come out of the gate with a 30-day summit like I did. It's kind of insane. And you really need to have the infrastructure in place, which I didn't, and I was prepared for that. But I would say you have to know what your goals are. That's the biggest thing. Anything you're going to do for marketing, whether it's a summit or anything else, any kind of campaign, you have to have your goals in mind and you have to know what your strategy is. A summit could be 1 day, it could be 3 days, it could be 7, it could be 15. It really just depends so much on what you want to accomplish with it, how you want to serve your people, what your people want. A lot of people will do summits where they have multiple speakers on less days, excuse me. And I believe that's what you're doing, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right, Sasha? Yeah. And so that's really a model that's very popular. It works really, really well. The reason I did it a different way, where I only had one speaker per day and only one topic to talk on, was because my audience wants that. That's who I serve, are people who get overwhelmed by all the noise, and they don't need more to put on their plate. They're busy. You know, they got families, they got businesses, they got, a lot of them are still working and they're doing the business on the side. So the last thing they want is more on their to-do list. So because I know who my audience is, I was able to design a summit that worked for them. That's not everybody's audience. Everybody's audience is going to be different and going to want different things. And in fact, I had a lot of people telling me I should be doing it differently, and I should give 72 hours, and I should put lots on one day. And I thank everybody for the feedback, but at the end of the day, what I should do is what feels good for me and what's right for my audience.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so my audience is busy as well, but I feel like they have a little bit more time to invest during the weekends. So I decided personally to go ahead and do my summit over a short period of time. That way it's also easier. I don't have to get as many guests, and I still get all that information. But it is really based on that ideal customer that you're trying to target. And in the past interviews of the summit, we've talked a lot about that, so you can go ahead and look back at those. But that's such a great tip for anybody who's struggling with that. So my second question for you is, if somebody wants to get started summiting, what's that first step that they should take?
Well, I think if you already know you want to get in, if you already want to do a summit, hopefully you've taken a few steps to know that. But yeah, as you mentioned, the avatar, the ideal client avatar, you have to know who your audience is. And also it's important to know what you want after the summit. So for example, for me with the Business Building Rockstar Summit, I knew that was launching a new brand, the Business Building Rockstar brand. I knew that after the summit, there was going to be, I was launching my academy, so that clients who were serious about long-term are working with me very intensively for long term to build up their business and build their platform really quickly, they had an opportunity to work with me. And then I knew that after the academy closed down, that I was going to launch a podcast. And then I knew that after the podcast, I'm going to do the summit again. So I have this strategy already planned out. And you don't have to get necessarily that detailed, but at least know what leads to what. You know, don't just go in to do a summit, say, hey, this will be cool. Like, what do you want to get out of it? You have to be really clear on what's in it for you, what's in it for your audience, and also what's in it for your guests. And this is feedback that I got from a lot of my guests, is that, you know, I made this so easy for them. I made it so easy for them to say yes. I had everything very organized. I gave. I didn't expect anything in return. And that's what endeared people to me. And that's why a lot of my guests from the summit who had never heard of me before are coming back for my podcast and are happy to support me and happy to share about what I'm doing, because I made it so easy for them. And that's something that most entrepreneurs who go into summiting miss. They don't think about the value that they're bringing to the guest. And let me tell you, anybody who's starting out doing a summit, you're not bringing that to a new audience. So don't even say that. Don't approach guests and say, you know, here's what's in it for you. You get to be in front of this whole new audience, because quite frankly, they don't need that. You have to figure out what your guests want, what they need, what your audience wants and needs, and what you want and need. And when you can meld all three of those and find that middle ground, you've hit the mother lode.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start going into summits, they put a lot of pressure on the actual guests, because they want the guests to promote, but sometimes they just can't do it. So you really need to make sure that you're not putting all this pressure on the guests, because you're not helping them. They have a much bigger audience than you, necessarily, I mean.
Yes.
you need to make sure that you're really giving them that comfortable environment rather than pressuring them into marketing it too much or things like that. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, and frankly, I mean, I told my people, I don't expect anything from you. You know, you're giving me 30 to 40 minutes of your time, and I want to honor that and appreciate it. And so, and I actually have gotten into pretty strong discussions with other people who, you know, who have wanted me in their summit, and then they're telling me all the things I have to do. And I'm like, no, you know, for my summit, I paid for the Facebook ads and I hustled hard. And it's, as far as I'm concerned, when you're putting together a summit, that is your job to get the people there. It is not the job of the guests. And I think that that's something that somehow in our industry along the way, people got this false impression that, you know, oh, you can build your list because you can leverage the audience of your guests. Yeah, you can, but not the way most people do it. The way most people do it is they expect that. And so they have these big dollar signs in their eyes thinking, well, I'm just going to get guests to promote and I'm just going to produce it. And then, you know, that's enough. That's enough if I do that. And I've had some people actually ask for money. There's some people who are putting together summits who expect the guests also to pay. So these are bad business models. Just FYI, if anybody is listening in and you're thinking about summits, do not do that. This is your show. This is your baby, and you need to treat it like it is, you know? And I think, Sasha, I think it's brilliant that you're just doing a weekend. And I think that will stand out because a lot of people aren't doing weekends. And I think that it's great that, you know, 2 days, 2 or 3 days is perfect. And keep it easy. I think keep it simple is the biggest thing. One of the things that I did not have in place that I learned very quickly really should have been in place was a strong, I'm going to say CRM. Like it doesn't have to be the CRM necessarily, but I struggled with my email marketing, with my communications, because I didn't have systems that were properly talking to each other. I did not have all the tech stuff sorted. And I was getting support from other people who had different ideas. And so it was a big cluster. And, you know, I got really good feedback. People were happy with the summit, which is really the most important thing, that my audience was happy and that they got value from it. But for me, it wound up making my life so much more difficult. And so, you know, I never would recommend Infusionsoft to somebody just starting out, but knowing the scale that I had intended for my summit and now in hindsight, I really wish somebody would have like looked at me and said, hey, Nicole, for what you want to do, you need Infusionsoft. Because if I would have had that in place a few months before, it would have been so much smoother and easier, and I wouldn't have been running around like a crazy person, and my audience would have had a better experience and my guests would have had a better experience. Not to say that anybody didn't. I think everybody had a good experience, but it would have been that much better. And so I'm really excited for 2016's summit.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really important to get all the tech stuff out before you even launch, because you don't want to run into those roadblocks and have to sort them out 2 hours before you interview a guest because the last one didn't record or things like that. That happened when I was first recording for the summit. Tanya Paxit, she was so amazing, but it didn't record the first time. So if I had sorted through all that tech stuff, that wouldn't have happened, and it's going to give your guests a better experience. It'll give your viewers a better experience, and it'll also just attract more people because they'll see, oh, she's together. She's not fussing around with trying to figure out everything out at the last minute. And what you were saying about Infusionsoft is a great platform, but 2 platforms I really like, especially if you're just starting out and you don't know if you're going to go really high scale. One is MailChimp, and I suggest the paid version of that. And then that's if you're going more smaller. And if you plan to go into a bigger scale, or you have a bigger audience starting out with, I would suggest going with ConvertKit. ConvertKit's really awesome. So those are my two other suggestions for email management platforms. But the next question I have for you is, if somebody's been listening and they're like, okay, these are great tips, but why should I even have a summit? What are the benefits of having a summit? And also, what's a sign that someone maybe shouldn't have a summit for their business?
Great question, Sasha. Got me thinking here. So the first one was, sorry, I just lost so I'm thinking about what they shouldn't, who shouldn't. So I'll just go with that, and then you can remind me of the other thing I'm supposed to touch on. So again, you have to have strategy. You have to know what's in it for you, what's in it for your audience, and what is in it for your guest. On top of that, you have to have a plan for how are you going to market this. Because it's all fine and well if you want to do some interviews and you want to share it with the world, but if the world doesn't know you exist or the world doesn't know that it's happening, guess what? It doesn't matter. So you have to have your marketing strategy in place. I mean, that's really what I work on with people, is developing that complex strategy. So if you don't know what you're doing, like why you're doing it, you don't have to know how to do it. The how comes. But if you don't know why you're doing it and you're just jumping on a bandwagon, just don't do it. Like, that's just the wrong way to go. Summits are great if they're a right fit for you. So if you're somebody who doesn't like other people, like interacting with other people, a summit's a terrible thing. Like, for me, it was a perfect platform because I love talking to people. I'm really struggling on Periscope. At time of recording, Zach Spuckler, one of the rock stars from the Business Building Rockstar Summit, he is putting together a 5-day Periscope challenge. So I'm really excited to try that out and push myself. But I don't like talking where there's no two-way interaction. And I went with video like you're doing because I like seeing the other person. To me, that's like, my vibration just rises when I've got somebody who it's a conversation. I love it. So this is a great format for me. I've seen a lot of summits that they don't use video. They only do audio. And that's great for other people. It's okay for me. Like, I don't mind it. But even with my podcast, I'm bringing video in with the people who are willing to do video because I like it. It feels good to me and it's easier for me. It's fun for me. You know, I know a lot of your audience is bloggers. I don't blog. I've tried it, and, you know, I understand why to blog and I know the value of it. And I think blogging is great. And I love your blog, Sasha. But at the end of the day, it's exhausting to me. I don't like to blog. So it's just not a platform that's great for me to reach people because, yes, even though you can reach millions of people with blogging, if it doesn't feel good for you, it's the wrong platform. I mean, I hear about so many different ways, like some of my rock stars, you know, John Corcoran, Matt McWilliams, you know, they're brilliant at how they use the blog to reach more people. But if you don't like to blog, it's not going to help you. So with the summit, I think you have to know that this is a medium that will be fun for you, that it's going to be easy for you. If it's stressful and it's not fun, it's the wrong way to go. Or maybe even just put it on the back burner. Like, when I first had the concept that I wanted to do a summit, it wasn't something that happened overnight. Like, I knew that I wasn't ready. And the advice that I had gotten was 3 months. I was told 3 months is good for planning out your summit. And in hindsight, I would have given myself more, at least 9 months. So I started planning in May, really got, like, in May, I started thinking strategy, and then really started getting the nuts and bolts in June and started getting the interviews set up and everything for a November launch. That, for me, it wasn't enough time. But I also, again, I know myself really well. I like to be prepared. I don't like doing things last minute. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. So throwing things together really fast just doesn't work for me. So in hindsight, 9 months would have been better for the size of summit that I did. I think that if you're thinking of a 2 or 3 day thing, you know, and a month is okay if you're just doing something small. But generally, I think I agree with the people who told me 3 months. For something that you want to be, if you want to be known for doing a great summit, 3 months is the minimum.
Yeah, definitely. And I started planning out the summit probably when Nicole launched her summit. I have no idea where I even found out about that. But I was like, oh, that's a really great idea. I should do that too. So I started planning it back in December-ish, and now it's launching in March. So it does take a while. So you definitely want to start planning ahead. And another thing is, you do not have to do the size of summit that Nicole did. And you also, even my summit, I have about 8 people on. You don't need to have that big of a summit. You can do one day with maybe 5 people, maybe some of your closest friends. And if you can't find enough guests to book up 5 people, you can also do a solo episode. That's what I'm doing. Is my last episode of the summit is going to be solo. So it's going to be a really great way for them to connect with me personally at the end of the summit. But yeah, that's definitely a great suggestion. You need to give yourself enough time to plan ahead. And I think you answered both of them in one shot there.
Great.
I also wanted to touch on the whole blogging thing. So Nicole doesn't blog, and I know that. She has a really great newsletter, but she's really awesome on video. So that's just the medium she connects on. And actually, something that I am talking about in my upcoming course, it's about creating content, is you don't need to just stay in that I need to write mindset. A lot of bloggers who are teaching blogging, or business people who are teaching blogging, they say you need to write epic content that's like 4,000 words long, and that's not true. At least I don't think that's true. You need to find a platform you connect with, whether it's audio, video, writing, and then you sort of need to use that to your advantage. So if you like audio, but your audience prefers to read things, you could transcribe your posts. Or if you like video, but your audience likes to listen to the things, as Nicole said, you can record it over video and then just turn it into audio. So those are just some tips for making sure that that content part of your summit works for you. My next question is, so now that people have sort of planned out their summit and they're ready to go on the strategy part, how can they set up a marketing plan that will get as many people as possible through the door for that summit?
Good question. I just want to back it up a little bit to that last thing you were talking about, if you don't mind, about content. And one of the great things about having a summit is it gives you an enormous amount of content. So, for example, one of the things that I did, and this actually ties into this next question about the marketing plan, was, for example, I created special reports based on the interviews that I did. So I created a report, Launch Like a Rockstar, an insider's report. And so within that, I took some of the information that was shared with me by Gina Gabellini and by Matt McWilliams, and I melded it into basically a blog post, but it's a report, right? So I don't know how many words it is, but it's a couple pages. So it's easy to read, but it's content rich. And then I put a pretty little e-cover on it, and I put it on a landing page, and it's a way to opt in for the I could use it as a way to opt in for the summit, which I did. I ran some Facebook ads with that report. So you get this free launch report if that's interesting to you, if you're looking at launching. And then when you opt in for that, you get invited to also get a ticket for the summit. So when it comes to marketing strategy, it can be as complex or as simple as you want, but I would encourage you to always look at how can you use what you're doing as long as it's fun, as long as you're enjoying it, and as long as you're providing value. What can you do to maximize the content that you're creating? Because it takes time. Everything that we do takes time, and our time is valuable. There's a finite amount of time that we have on this earth. So like, make the most of it, you know? I took the videos from the guests from the summit before the summit aired, and I made teaser clips. So I cut the pieces. And then what was really fun was I just participated in Gina Gabellini's launch of her big program. And so I took the interview that we did together and I cut it again. I cut it so that it had different parts that would be pertinent to what she's up to right now. And then I used that in different ways. So I think it's important when you're looking at your marketing strategy to look at why would people want to come to you? First of all, what value is your summit going to bring to people? And then once you know that, you also know your people well enough to know what problems they have that your summit solves. So then dig in more to that, create more than just one lead magnet. I'm a huge, huge fan of freebies and lead magnets. And I think that there's never too many, never too many. So while I don't traditionally blog, I do create lots of lead magnets. So anytime I do an interview, for example, on a podcast, whatever the audience needs, I'm happy to create content for them and create a special opt-in page for them and give them what they're looking for. So there's a marketing plan. It's just so complex and there's no one size fits all. You just have to know yourself, your audience, what you're trying to accomplish before, after, and all that stuff. And you create, it's like a puzzle, like a game.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question I have for you is how can people actually get guests onto their summit?
How can they get guests on? Well, I think the question isn't how to get guests on, it's how to get good guests on, because you can get guests. Guests, they'll come. They're easy. All you got to do is put it up on Facebook or Twitter or wherever you want to put it up, and you say, I want guests, you'll have plenty of guests. The more clear you can be about your audience, about the value you're bringing, about the mission of your summit, about who is the perfect fit for your ideal audience, then you figure out who those people are that you want. And I would say make a list. And Navid Moazes, who was the rock star that spoke about summits on my summit, he says, I believe, created A list, a B list, and a C list. And I like that idea. So you have like your top people who it's like, this would be a dream come true if I could interview these people. That would be your A list. And your B list would be like, I really, really respect these people and I would love to have them. And I think it's possible for me to reach out. And then your C list with people would be like, these are the low hanging fruit. These are the easy people. These are my friends, as you said before. These are people that I know who already like me, who would be happy to hang out with me for a half hour, an hour, whatever it is. And then, it depends on what your comfort level is. Some people could start chipping away at C because that's easy. And for their first go, maybe they're like, hey, I'm going to try this out and see how it goes and test the waters first. So let me do it with people who who can have fun with me and who it's going to be easy and low stress. They can go with C. If you want to, get a little out of your comfort zone, you can start with your B list and chip away there and see if you can get some of those people. And then, if you're ambitious, you can go with C. But I think the most important thing is just knowing what value you're bringing and being able to really bring value to them and make it really easy for them.
Yeah, definitely. So the next question I have for you, well, first I'd like to comment a little bit about that. So you also need to have a strategic pitch. So when you actually pitch to these people, I would say start with the C list of yours, because you want to start getting guests onto your summit immediately. And then after that, I would go into actually starting to build a relationship with that A list and B list. And then you could jump into actually pitching to them. And remember that these people, they don't have a lot of time. So try to keep your pitch short and to the point. That's really the main thing for it. And the next question is, what do you think about virtual versus in-person summits?
I think they're both fantastic. Again, it goes to the audience and what you're trying to accomplish. So, I mean, Samantha Kelly is actually about to host a live summit in Dublin for social media. And it's super, super exciting. I wish I could be there. Virtual makes it really easy because you don't have to, your guests don't have to travel, your audience doesn't have to travel. And so for me, virtual was the right way to go. But I think they're both fantastic.
So now I know a lot of people in my audience struggle with, okay, this summit idea sounds really awesome, but I have no existing audience. So how can I leverage that like zero list and actually start using the summit to grow an audience from scratch like you did to build your brand for the business building Rockstar?
Well, I think you don't need a list. I mean, I didn't have a list. In fact, I did have a small list, but that I didn't actually bring over to the new brand because it just wasn't it wasn't targeted. So you just have to. You have to know what you want, and you have to know what you're willing to put into it as well, right? I mean, I spent a lot of money. If you don't have a following, if you don't have money, if you don't have anything that you're bringing to the table, then you're going to have a really hard time putting a summit together that people are going to come to, because you have to have something. So I would say if you're thinking about a summit and you're planning in the future and you're planning it out with plenty of time, start building your following on social media. Start providing value everywhere you can. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but everything is all about relationships, everything that we do, right? In business, if you want people to buy, you have to give them value first. If you want people to follow you, if you want people to come to your summit, you have to give them a reason. So, yeah, that's the biggest thing, is just make sure you're working on building that audience and don't rely on your guests to bring you the audience, because they won't.
Yeah, that's totally true. So how can people start actually making money with the summit? How can that summit be leveraged besides just growing an audience? Because yeah, your guests won't necessarily promote for you. So it can be actually really hard to use a summit to grow your audience sometimes, especially if you're not relying on those guests. But how can people actually get some money out of all this hard work that they've done to promote that summit?
I'd love to give you a simple answer, but there's really not, because everything is so individualized. So, and I think that people who are going into the summit with the idea of making lots of money, it's not a novice strategy. So if you're going into the summit to start building your list, awesome. If you're going into the summit to make relationships, build relationships, awesome. If you're going into the summit to build your platform, awesome. If you're going into the summit to make money, awesome. But these are all different levels. And I think that sometimes people think they can have their cake and eat it too. And I am a big believer and proponent of the law of attraction. And I do believe that anything's possible. But I think that if you're trying to do everything, you're not focusing in. So figure out what you want to do with your summit. Figure out what the benefit to you is going to be and focus there. Everything else will then come. If you're focusing on making money and building your list and building relationships and it's just like when we talk about choosing a niche, you can't serve everybody well. So you can't get all of these things done well. Pick one, focus there, and the other things will come. So in terms of ways of monetizing, of course, you can sell the recordings if you want. You can use it as a build up to a program and market your program through it, or a product or a community. You can monetize by getting sponsors. You can monetize by using affiliate links. There's an infinite ways. There's infinite possibilities for how to monetize, and the only limiter there is your creativity and your interest and your willingness to go out and hustle and find those things and find those ways. But again, I think the most important thing to remember here is do one thing, have one main focus. Obviously, you want to make money. obviously. Like, who wants to work for free? Nobody. If you do, I don't know. But figure out really what your main focus is, and the other things will come. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it does. That's totally makes sense. So this interview is coming up to a wrap. But I do have one last quick question for you. If someone's ready to get started summiting, how far ahead should they begin promoting? I think is my question. And
that's a great question. That's a great question. And I think it really depends on everything that we've already talked about. How big is your summit? How many guests do you have? What are you planning to accomplish? What is your expertise? Do you have any help? Are you doing it on your own? There's all different kinds of things. I was given the advice not to promote it until 2 weeks out. And I think that for me, that was the wrong advice. I would say start promoting it as soon as you can. Get people on a launch team. Do not depend on your guests to promote. Do not depend on them to even like be your cheerleaders. They won't generally. Some people will, but some people won't. So don't depend on them. Don't depend on family and friends, because generally they won't support you either. That's one of the biggest pitfalls most entrepreneurs experience starting out that nobody ever wants to talk about, is that, the expectation of having a support system isn't always there. Start recruiting people who just think you're cool. Put together a freebie or something. And this is what I'm working on for the podcast, and what I will also be doing for the summit is really finding those people who already love me and who already think what I'm doing is cool, and having them be my biggest cheerleaders and share about it. So even now, 21 days out from the podcast, I'm sharing about the fact that I'm going to be launching a podcast on March 21st, right? With the summit, I'm already in 2015 summit, I was already letting people know, come back for 2016 summit, November 1st to 30th, 2016, BBRS 2016. We're going to be doing it all again. So my advice would be start promoting it as soon as you are sure that it's something you're going to be doing. The danger in that is if you are not 110% sure and you start talking about what's about to happen and it doesn't happen, that is bad for your reputation. Like, you don't want to be known as somebody who's talking about doing something and it doesn't get done. So make sure that if you're going to start talking about it, if you're going to start using social media, if you're going to start letting people know what's up, do it once you're 110% sure. And I would also say, make sure you have that domain in place, or if it's going to be on your blog or whatever it is, make sure you have a place for people to go, even if it's not created yet. For example, I told you bbrshow.com or businessbuildingrockstars.com. That'll get you to my website. But right now my website doesn't exist, right? I'm still building it. In fact, I'm building it today. But with those domains, I've got them forwarded to my summit, opt-in. So there's always something that you want to have in place so that you can, when you're talking about it, you can tell people where they should go to get more information, even if it's not quite ready yet.
Yeah, definitely. So I have two last questions for you that I've been asking everyone who's been coming on the summit. The first thing is, and you can just go through this pretty quickly because we need to wrap this up, but the first thing is, what is your biggest tip for anyone who wants to start summiting but they don't know what to do first?
Figure out what you want to do first. Figure out why you're doing a summit. And once you know that, the rest should come pretty easily.
Yeah, that's definitely a great tip. You need to have that strategy plan in place, know what you're doing before you jump in. It's really important. So the last thing is, how can people support you in what you're doing, and how can they find out more about it?
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead and head on over to bbrshow.com, and there's information about the podcast there and how you can get in touch.
Awesome. All right. So it was so awesome having you here. Thank you so much for coming on to the summit. And we will be up next with Tyson Lerner, who's going to be talking a little bit about her experience with building a 100K business for personal training online. So make sure you come back and check out that. But thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sasha. I love what you're up to, and I look forward to following your journey.
Thank you.